Katana number 8, written by Ann Nesenti, art by Alex Sanchez and Fabrizio Fiorentino. So last issue, who even cares? Honestly, it barely even impacts this issue, but Katana's dead husband's soul said, "I'm very disappointed in you." That happened. So we pick up in Japantown in San Francisco, and Katana is looking upon the body of Shun the Untouchable because now I guess she's allowed to for some reason. And we see that she lost her foot, which had like a bunch of, I think, dragons on it, they said. I don't know. It doesn't even matter. So Katana starts looking over the body, and she sees that one of the legs has an arrow on it. And she's like, oh, the Arrow Clan, one of the outsiders, connecting this into what's going on in Jeff Lemire's Green Arrow book, despite how much I don't want that to happen. But she's like, oh, of course there are other weapons clans. That makes perfect sense. But then Shun says, hey, I think I have a tattoo you're going to be very explicitly interested in. And she shows Katana her stomach, and Katana's like, oh my, but we don't get to see that. Then Katana walks down the street, and a bird attacks her, specifically a falcon. And she's like, wow, that bird is fast and strong, and it's a weapon. I will track down whoever has that weapon of a bird tomorrow. And we see the bird returns to its owner high on a building named the Falconer and his falcon. And Falcon says, I'm just going to quote him here. What did you think of our new opponent? She loves her sword. She thinks it can slice through anything. But you are the superior weapon, talking to his falcon. A sword cannot kill everything. It can't kill a falcon. Miss Nesenti, a sword can definitely kill a bird. That's just the thing. Anyway, we see that we go back to where Shun was being kept, and there's a fire. Everyone's running away, and Katana goes in and talks to the brothel owner and just like, oh, what happened here? And he's like, oh, go away. Some men were looking for you, and they burnt down my building anyway. And he's like, what? Which men? And she's like, oh, if I snitch, they'll come after me again. Just get out of here. And so she makes her way to the bar where she works. And of course, that bar has also been attacked. And just like, oh, some men came in here. I paid protection money from their rackets, but they still destroyed the place. Like, this is hopeless. And so she doesn't know who did it either. She doesn't know if it was Sword Clan or the Daggers. But regardless, Katana puts together like, yeah, this is on me. The place where I worked and the place where I visited often, that's on me. So she goes and talks to Junko, who's watching over Shun, and on the TV is Jack Ryder talking about like a bunch of people who died in some sort of like a parade or something that went wrong. It doesn't matter. And Junko's got hot dogs on the grill, and he's like, hey, Katana, use your coil sword to cut up this coconut. And so she does, and Shun looks at it, and we see them talking more about Jack Ryder and just like, oh, he's such an opportunist. He's so much of a bad person. He's always there just capitalizing on these horrible things. And he's like, Katana basically says like, hey, Shun, I'm going to fight the Sword and Dagger clan. And she says, okay, but I want to be the one that goes after Coil. And she's like, what? Why? And then Shun takes off her mask because she's been wearing a mask for a while here. And she has spiral cuts all up and down her face saying, Coil's the one who did this to me. I am going to get my revenge. So we go back to Jack Ryder. He just finishes reporting on whatever the hell that was. And then we see him say like, oh man, I feel so rough. I could really use a drink. And we see standing behind him is the ghost form of the Creeper. So yeah. So anyway, Katana and Shun make their way to the Dragon House, which is in the mountains above San Francisco, which is just a building that looks like a dragon. And they climb up into it. They get attacked by a bunch of Dagger Clan and Sword Clan people. She goes jumping around all over the dragon, trying to find wherever Coil is. And finally, she jumps into the mouth of the dragon, and she comes across Sickle. And her and Sickle cross for a second, and then they see the ghost of Maseo, her husband, in the reflection of the swords. And Maseo says, like, hey, stop it. You're going to make her remember that night. And she's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, no, please don't remember that night. And then all of a sudden, Sickle's like, hey, look into your sword and you'll remember that night. Okay, so here's the thing. Katana, Sickle and Maseo were brothers. Katana was a young girl and she fell in love with both of them. She admired Maseo because he was stable and loved Sickle, whatever his name actually was, because he was rough and, a bad boy. And so eventually she's like, hey, I want to settle down. I married Maseo. But he never quite thought that she fully stopped loving Sickle, so there was always that little bit of tension. She became a housewife, and her husband was working as basically a hitman, more or less, using his sword abilities. And he's like, hey, I've got this job tonight if you want to come after. And she says, sure. So they both go to attack this guy who apparently has been attacking young girls. At least that's what Maseo tells Katana. Turns out that's not the truth. So when they get back, he's dead quiet. She thinks something's wrong. He tells her just go to bed. And as she goes to bed, she hears Sickle coming inside. And he's like, this isn't what we do, brother. It's not the outsider's way. And he's like, this isn't about the job. This is about how you want my wife, isn't it? And so Maseo holds a sword to Sickle's throat. Katana busts in and separates him, saying, no, don't kill your brother. And in doing so, the sword goes into Maseo's throat. And Maseo's, in his dying breath, says, you always loved him more than me, as his soul is bonded to the sword forever. So then they set fire to the house and she goes on her own way. So Katana remembers, oh, that's right, Sickle isn't the one who killed his brother. It was me. I did it. And Maseo says, yep, and now that you know the truth, I'm out. Take care of my wife, bro. And he just leaves. And so at that point, they get fired upon. Sickle and Katana jump down to see that Coil has taken Shun. And she's like, Katana, you have joined up with Sickle, you betrayers, whatnot. But regardless, you'll have to fight through the whole Sword Clan to get to us. And he rips off part of Shun's clothes to expose the tattoo on her stomach, which is Katana, very clearly Katana, in front of the world that's just on fire with the dragon wrapped around it, saying, your Soul Taker sword will unleash an apocalypse of hellfire upon the world. And so Coil uses his sword to grab hold of the Soul Taker and says, to rule the Sword Clan, you have to beat me first. It wasn't an awful issue, but I still just, don't get it. I feel like there's some underlying theme or some panel I am missing here every time I read an issue that just explains the through line, because I just don't get. Clearly we have established that Coil is evil, Sickle might be okay, Maseo, he enjoys seeing his wife with his brother, I guess. I don't know what's going on there. And then we introduce this whole Shun thing of Shun's actually a warrior, which didn't see that coming. And then we keep cutting over to Jack Ryder. I don't give a crap about Jack Ryder. Why do I have to give... it's just, there's so much going on in this book. It doesn't have any sort of focus. It's the same problem I have with all of Ann Nesenti's books. It just feels like it was written, like Ann Nesenti knows what the plot is, and we're just getting all the quote-unquote cool moments without the underlying foundation and backstory of how do these people know each other? Why do they care about this thing? I don't get any of that. So this issue, while not as bad as previous issues, definitely can't spark any higher than a 6. And in fact, I think I'm going to go ahead and just drop it down to the 5, because it's not good. It's not awful. It's not making me hate this book. It's just every time I come to it, I'm like, ugh, all right, sure, why not? So yeah, that's 5 material.